We're recording live.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for stopping by. Our guest today is the owner and founder of Trillium Studios in Milwaukee. She inspires her clients to tune into their innate potential and wisdom through connecting with the energy body that is called prana. Her work is integrating yoga and mindfulness into the treatment of ALS is featured in a 12-minute film, Pizza Prana. You can check that out on duncanentertainment.com, but we'll put that link in the description. Speaking of good energy bodies, shout out to the Pelly Clinic in North Van. Focus on your body's innate potential to live life of total wellness, and also Hustle 2.0, investing in a second chance. If you like what we're doing here, please like, subscribe. Thank you so much. But without further ado, Tina Langdok, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you, Devin. I'm doing just fine. Happy to be here.
Awesome.
Yeah,
We're
no,
so
thanks.
stoked.
Thanks, Tina. We really appreciate we have common friends kind of all over the globe by the sound of it,
Yeah.
so it's really nice. And are you in Milwaukee? Where are you right now?
I am. I'm on the east side of Milwaukee, and I'm up in my
Nice.
yoga studio called Trillium, which is on the third floor of my home.
Beautiful,
Wow.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, how's it? How are things out there? It's a beautiful day. We're in Vancouver, and it's just an absolute beautiful day today. So yeah.
Yeah, same here. I'm going to head out
Nice.
on my bike over to Lake Michigan as soon as we're done today. So.
Yeah, I'm going to do that right after this too. After this, we record this, I'm going to head up my bike up the mountain.
To Michigan?
Nice.
To Michigan.
Great.
Yeah, I'll be there in about 4 weeks or more. So before we start our chat, what we usually do here is we do something called two truths and a lie, right, Dev? So what I've got two truths about Tina, and I have one lie, and I'm going to read them, and Devin and I are going to guess which is the lie. Okay, so here we go. Number one is I studied Swedish for 1 year in college and spent a semester of my junior year in a Swedish school outside of Stockholm. That's pretty good. Okay, number two, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. Nice. In 2003 with an all-female expedition. That's a good one. That's believable. Yeah. Okay. Number three, I'm an avid scuba diver and I've explored reefs throughout Central America and the Caribbean, but I've never seen a shark.
Oh, man. Those are some good ones.
Okay, Dev. What do you
Well, oh man, yeah, there's some good stuff there. You know what? I believe that those are all potentially true, but
Yeah.
I think maybe the last one is I think maybe you have seen a shark. So there's a little play around with the words there. That's what I'm gonna go for, Nige. What are you thinking?
Man, I think it's the maybe the Swedish.
Oh, okay.
Studying Swedish and then going, to school in Sweden outside. I mean, yeah, it's totally plausible, but I don't know. Okay, so those are our guesses. So Tina, what is? Do we have one, or did I mess one up for you there?
The lie was Kilimanjaro.
Oh.
No!
I was sold.
I thought that was totally solid for sure.
It was.
I did hike the Salcante with Chip Duncan, which is the hardest trek I've ever done, and we climbed up to 15,400 feet about 2 years ago. So that was the hardest trek I've ever done. I have summited 314ers here in the US out in Colorado, but
nice.
Haven't done Kilimanjaro. So
Dev, you did the Salcantay too with Jamie.
Did. Yes,
right?
yeah,
Jamie
and Dill
and Dylan, your brother. Yeah. When you were like 16 or something, didn't you? Yeah, you guys did the.
It's a beautiful track, isn't it, Devin?
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. It's just like more, you keep going. You're like, oh, what's over that little ridge or that? Oh, something more beautiful. What's over? Oh my goodness. Something more. Yeah. It just keeps coming. So
yeah.
Yeah. We're hoping to go back, keeping our fingers crossed. You guys are doing a return trip here, or journey, I should call it, in this November as well. So I'm like, we'll see how that plays out. So we're keeping our fingers crossed for that. Yeah. And I threw the shark bit in there at the end of here.
I have seen a shark, actually.
See.
Yeah.
So one
Yeah,
of
I
the
thought,
first times I went diving, my boys, I have two sons and they were little, and I came back, went with a group of teachers and said that I had been shark diving, and I actually had a video. So these little boys were just like, completely glued to the TV to see Ross and Ben's mom diving with sharks. So I got a lot more cred with the little boys around the neighborhood after that
Nice.
outing. But I do love to scuba dive.
yeah, it is actually, yeah, I think Devin and actually all of our kids are taking. Dylan's a diver, I'm a diver, and then I think Keena's taking hers, I think in a week or two, and I don't know if you're gonna take it, but yeah, it's amazing. And yeah, and the shark thing is cool. You see this, it's like seeing a bear. Actually, Keena was walking the dog this morning up the sidewalk here, and a bear came out of the bush about, I don't know, 10, 15 feet in front of them, and just kind of sauntered and walked across the road and up into the bush. I don't know if you knew that, Dev. Yeah. That was right now. That was like 20 minutes ago.
Oh, really?
It's that same thing when you see, it's like you get like you're anticipating seeing a bear or a shark, and you're like, but actually when you see them, you're like, oh, okay, whatever. And they kind of do it's like a shark, I'm out here and you see a shark, swimming like small, swimming under you. As you remember, we were snorkeling and saw that shark kind of cruising underneath us, and you're like, oh, cool, they're just beautiful. Yeah. But you're just scared. Anyway, I'm rambling on here as usual. So your Trillium Studios is a really interesting thing. Dev, you said you wanted to ask Tina a question about?
I just wanted to ask you, for sure. Like, I know that you have like an absolute, like, it seems like a lifetime of experience teaching yoga, and like 40 odd years and like over 1,000 hours. Like, it's just mind boggling to hear numbers like that. But my question was like, what was the inspiration? Like, what did you, when you were a little kid, did you just be like, you know what, mindfulness and yoga, or is it something that you went through and you're like, I need to, change my life and go different path? What was the inspiration to stepping into this world of mindfulness and yoga? And,
Well, it happened back when I was in college. It would have been the like 77. And I found myself in the midst of an eating disorder. And people didn't know what those were back then. And I, was came from a pretty closed environment, pretty protected. And all of a sudden I was in the big world of college and learning all these wonderful things, and felt overwhelming. So my coping ended up being an eating disorder. And I knew that my physical body and my emotional bodies were both very, were really suffering. And I didn't know what to do about it. And there really wasn't any support in the psychology world or even the medical world. They thought maybe it was a thyroid issue. But I found yoga. I was just walking through the university bookstore, and I really believe that a book about yoga hopped into my hands. And I thought, this feels like a way I can reclaim my body. So I started to read it, and then I started to practice in my room every day, sometimes for an hour or two. And I felt something not that different than what Dr. Scott Steber found when he started practicing yoga after his diagnosis of ALS. I felt a connection to something bigger, a connection to myself that felt so authentic and real that I had forgotten. And it was a mix of meditation and posture, a little bit of breath work. And so really for about 5 years, I didn't go to a class. I went to some meditations at the Ecumenical Center, but it just felt right. Maybe it was something that had been part of a previous lifetime for me, but it felt like home. So I kept practicing and practiced through the family time of having children, and continued to practice. But I sort of knew in the back of my mind, I was a Spanish teacher at a high school for many years. Wow.
Fantastic.
And then I went, this yoga piece has been such an important part of my own healing and wholeness that I'd really love to share it with others. So I I did the training to teach yoga. And then I continued on to be a yoga therapist, training with integrated yoga therapy, and found that opened doors to a lot of clients that were having similar issues to what I was experiencing, that feeling of separation. And so that's really what got me into teaching yoga full time. And then mindfulness-based stress reduction is the type of meditation that I teach. And I love the neuroscientific aspect, that it's this merging of ancient teachings and modern science coming together to say this really can make a difference. And it allows me to reach people who maybe wouldn't be part of the yoga world, but really are looking for reducing their stress through meditation, but they need the structure, they need a method, and they need some teachings. And so I like the structure of the curriculum, as well as the neuroscience and secular basis. So that kind of led me to the trillium. Trillium actually is a 3-petaled white flower. And so it's body, mind, and heart or spirit.
Beautiful.
So for me, bringing those 3 aspects together is what happens when we practice. And so Trillium's always been my studio name since I started teaching.
Wow.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, Devin and I were going, okay, Trillium. Like I thought, it sounds like a metal. It sounds like, it's that's really nice.
Beautiful.
Okay,
Yeah.
that is beautiful, and it's really interesting that you said, how you came across yoga and everything, and this past year has been very interesting, 18 months or 2 years for a lot of people, right? But there's also been a lot of discovery, I think, and for myself, like you mentioned, for stress reduction. And I was suffering from some really weird anxiety attacks, which I hadn't really had before in this past year. And Devin was kind of helping me because you had time too, so you were researching some mindfulness and things, and then we were looking at like Wim Hof, the Wim Hof breathing method, right, for reducing stress. So I started doing the breathing and getting into the breathing, and then all these other little bits and pieces kind of fell. So when we were doing some yoga with a yoga instructor friend of ours, we were doing nidra yoga at night before we went to bed, like 8 o'clock, and you just come home and go straight to bed. And it was really nice. So all these little bits and pieces. Then we're also doing some Pilates and then meditation and all this. And I found just in the past year, taking pieces that really worked for me and kind of building this morning routine. So I get up in the morning and I have a shot of beet juice for high blood pressure and whatever, ginger, and it's all an apple, and it's Rico makes this great little elixir or whatever, but I have a shot of that, and then I go stretching, some kind of yoga and all this, and then breathing, and then at the end I do a cold plunge, an ice plunge, right? And this whole process takes about an hour and a half every day, pretty much every day. I wouldn't say every day, but almost every day. And like you were saying, like to get into this kind of this flow and this rhythm of doing something, because I was kind of, I needed a bit of help, and I kind of was able to build this whole thing together. Now it's become part of my life every day, and I just feel, and Reiko does it, Dev does a bunch of it, Kina, it's really helped a lot. With this just getting in, and just, I never did it before. I never really did this type of thing before, but it really, I have to do it. I've become addicted to it.
Yeah. And we find that the more we connect with what's going on in our lives, whatever it is, if it's ALS or anxiety or, the stress of the pandemic, it's like the more we connect with it, the more we're able to actually work with it instead of, creating more resistance and that fear of actually being with what's already here. Yeah.
Right.
So it's really helpful. And especially people dealing with difficult diagnoses and, whatever life is throwing in our path, and that being with is, how do we do that? We can be with it in our breath. We can be with it by sitting in meditation. We can be with it by stretching through our body and feeling the tension and the release of tension.
Right.
And so all those pieces of the puzzle relate back to prana, relate back to these yoga practices. And I love yoga nidra. That to me is a prana-based practice of working with complementary opposites, of also working with moving through the body in this unique way to kind of, they call it parachuting down into theta waves.
You do. Yeah.
Yeah, you really do. And you're just, you're deep in that restoration and relaxation. And the National Institute of Health here in the US has actually recognized yoga nidra as one of the most restorative and rejuvenative practices for many different presentations. So it's good work.
Wow, because it's really never done it before. And then our friend Michelle was doing a little class, and we do it in the evening because you're right out after you come up. But she said it was like, it's like you're in the ocean and you just gently go and you kind of gently bounce off the bottom, and because you're come in and out of consciousness, and it's just this, and you come out at the end, you're in this deep, you just go so deep and you're so relaxed, and you come home and you basically just collapse into bed and you're gone, and you wake up in the morning and you feel great. Yeah, it's really it's really helped. I've got some slides here, which I'm going to throw up here as well. So for our listeners, we've got some photographs and things that our viewers can see on YouTube, but then we'll explain them for everybody else. So this is a photograph of you with Scott, and we'll talk about Scott in a moment. This is an incredible story. But here's your studio.
Yeah, there it is.
And this is some things that you do, right? And I threw some of this up so we could chat a little bit about it or whatever.
I think energy to some people is like woo woo or weird.
Yes.
If we talk about energy, what do we mean? And so I have always liked the model of the 5 koshas or layers or doorways to balance that are part of the yoga philosophy. And I think they help to describe what prana or energy is. So the first layer is called the physical body, and that's the cells and tissues. It's also the systems of the body. It's anything we can dissect, put under a microscope, or study. It's our physical being that's tangible. The energy body is composed of prana, and this is kind of the intangible part of our physical experience. So the body is actually this physical body of cells and tissues, and the energy body or prana, and they're integrated. You can't separate them. Okay. And so they're breath, energy, vitality, life force, but it's also awareness. So I like to think of prana as the vehicle of the body-mind connection. It's like the great connector. So when we connect through our awareness of the body, we feel the vibrations of prana in our body. We're bringing the body and the physical body and the energy body together via awareness. So seeing where prana fits here, I think is helpful. The third layer is the psycho-emotional body, our thoughts and feelings as they unfold in moment-to-moment awareness. And then the wisdom, or what I like to call the cultural body, are those limiting and false beliefs, those that come from our family, our culture, and our life experience. And they kind of get us stuck, until, again, we're willing to lean in and notice that they usually have the word enough. I'm not quite pretty enough, smart enough, talented enough. I haven't studied enough. But really, we do have an innate and wonderful level of experience that's present if we allow ourselves to tap into it. And then the bliss body is where we wish we could all hang out all the time, that place where you're kind of in the flow and in the oneness.
Yeah.
And, I think that the real job of the bliss body is to remind us of that oneness. And then we forget again, and then we remember. But it kind of keeps us on the path. When we've touched that bliss body, we want to come back and be inside of it again. And so these aren't separate layers, but intertwining aspects of our unique humanity. And I like to think of them as doorways to healing. Some people come through the physical body, and others come through that psycho-emotional body, like a therapist. As a yoga therapist, I really like coming through the energy body. I find that it can give people a doorway to whatever is going on in their life that offers them a bigger and more unique view.
Interesting. It's interesting. You've got the energy body and you've got prana. And so it's really, so I go to actually Reiko and I go to acupuncture therapist at Worcester, and it's called Creekside Health. And Dr. Dominique Violet, she's amazing. We interviewed her on our show here too. She was actually a Olympic snowboard for the Canadian National Olympic team in Olympics and stuff as well before she became a acupuncture therapist, but every time I went yesterday and I go in, and what's the first thing she does? I sit down and she grabs my wrists and she feels my pulse, and she feels my life. She says, I'm feeling your life force, how strong your life force is today, your prana, I guess, your life force. And if it's like up or down, and she says everything, it's all about your life force, everything. And so that's really interesting that you said that. Yeah.
Yeah, because just about every model of healing recognizes an energy body, except for the allopathic. We got kind of stuck in the physical body,
Right.
but that's changing. I think there's more and more awareness of this layer of energy, the importance of breath, and the importance of meditation.
Right. Okay. Wow. And then the 5. Okay. I got.
So this is kind of how we find healing. When one kosha is shut down, due to imbalance or dysfunction, the portals of the other koshas open wider. And so what I believe happened in Dr. Scott with ALS is that as his physical body, as the motor neurons started to, become dysfunctional, his energy body went, hey, I'm still really flowing fine here. So he feels that ALS set him up perfectly for entering into prana. It's one of the quotes from the film.
Yeah.
So there's actually a great book by a Canadian doctor, Norman Doidge, and it's called The Brain That Heals Itself. And he did a lot of work saying that, when one doorway is closed down completely, like if we lose a sense, or he did a lot of work with people that had lost their kinesthetic ability to stay upright. And he said, if one part is gone, the other parts do actually step up. And I believe that's what happened with Dr. Scott. His prana maya kosha, his prana layer, is more vibrant, more active. And it's what he follows, the intelligence of this energy body, to not only plateau, but improve his relationship with his physical body and all the systems, his breath, his cardiovascular function. And even, as his wife says in the film, he's happier, So he's really able to connect to all the koshas through this energy body being more available.
Wow, that's just, I'll show the film or clips of the photographs in a second here too. It's just, so we've got more on prana here as well.
It's my favorite topic, as you can tell.
So it's really interesting. So even in my morning routines, I was thinking about, because I've watched the film a few times now, and it's a beautiful film, Pizza Prana. And I think, oh God, prana. And then Dr. Dom talks about prana, and you're talking about prana. And then so I'm doing my morning. I get into my morning breathing. I do the breathing. And there's an amazing book. You probably read it as well. It's called Breathe. It's by James Nestor, right? Yeah, I had the audio version right when I listened to it driving up and down to Worcester. Really, it's a great book. And so from the breathing, but then I get into my routine in the morning, and I seem to get into this other world. Like it seems to I go inside myself. Is that, and I'm wondering, like, is this, and I really have to kind of shake myself out of it to come back to this world. It's kind of like it's almost like I'm in another dimension or something. Because it's just, I'm in a different, I'm feeling different energy. It's absolutely incredible. So I don't know, maybe that's prana, maybe not, or maybe I'm just touching the surface. I don't know.
Maybe you're touching into that bliss body, that space of connection and wholeness. But it sounds like your doorway is prana, that you're going through awareness of your inner body, that you're going in through the breath.
Yes.
You're going in through calming the vritti, is what we call it, the fluctuations of the mind, thoughts that start to stress us out or take us over on autopilot. And so by kind of coming in through that prana portal, this practice of tuning into yourself in a new way, you're dropping into that bliss, that oneness for a while. And again, we can't maintain it. We can touch it. We can be, but as soon as we're celebrating, right, we're out. So I think that's
Yeah.
what I hear. I hear you're moving in through that prana portal.
Yeah. I mean, Devin had a good, we were talking about it the other day with somebody because we do this, Devin got us into this cold ice water, like this Wim Hof. We do the breathing and then we go do the ice water. And then we were going up and breaking into the ice up at Whistler in the winter and then going into the lake. But you're in a meditative state, right? And I don't know if I've got, yeah. So there is a photo. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So yeah. So
That's cool.
so yeah, you were saying, Devin, like we do the breathing and then you get into this, like you're so like if this ultra focus deep meditation, right?
Yeah, because I always
While you're
found, like, for somebody with me who's like dyslexic, ADD, for lots of people who I talk to, they're like, I could never meditate. Like one of our good friends who lives next door, she's a really hard time just like calming down and like to meditate. It's like it's not even fathomable. Like it's not gonna happen. So what I found, like going into the cold water, for me at least, it just like really centered myself, because obviously the only thing you can think of is how freaking cold you are. But it really calmed me down. So then after I'd get out of the cold water, then I would meditate and breathe. And then I had that, my brain was calm because
Mhm.
the water calmed me down. So now I'm able to kind of tap in and go and meditate without having, a over functioning crazy mind, and without having to go into the cold water submersion. So and I think this is so important for everybody to try to experience or try to meditate. But what would you say to people like me, or people like who have ADD, who it's hard for them to calm down, and how beneficial this stuff can be for you?
calm down their monkey mind, their monkey brain.
What would you say to somebody like that? And then also somebody who's just like, no, maybe it's not for me, but I think it's for everyone. I think everyone should do it.
Well, they have that opportunity if they choose to. Yeah. I'm working with a new client right now who has Parkinson's disease. And he came in and he goes, I've never done this yoga stuff. I don't think this is for me, but, I'm willing to try something new. I really want to find a way of being with my Parkinson's. And, I want to stay as healthy and active as I can for as long as I can.
Yeah.
So we started by doing flower hands. So we breathe in and open our hands, breathe out and bring our fingers together. And so we were doing these flower hands. So he would have a physical representation of his breath, which he found very helpful. At first he was like, I don't know if I can't tell if I'm breathing in or out. I get distracted, but his hands really helped him be more focused. So there was physical body, energy body, and mind all together.
Yeah.
And then we just did the left hand for a while. And then we went over to the right hand for a while. So we were doing what in neuroscience, we were getting into our lateral cortical networks, because that's what happens if you use one side of your body and then the other side. And he had something to do. So speaking to your ADD, it was like, now it's this hand, now I have to shift, now it's this hand. Right. And then you went back and forth, maybe, 10 times. And then we did both hands together. And the whole meditation probably took us, 7-8 minutes. And when we finished, he was sitting there and I said, well, how are you feeling? And he goes, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I think I just meditated. I can't wait to tell my wife. You won't believe it. So you find the doorway that works for you, and the cold was the ice bath was that doorway where you went, oh, this works. Then you touched that experience. You came out, you meditated, and now you can do it through that doorway, or you can, oh, there it is. You recognize when you're in that state, right?
Yes, you do.
You recognize it.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah. So,
right.
It just depends. I get to know my clients, and then I'm like, well, how can we get in there? What's available? What are you willing to do?
Right.
And so then we just start giving things a try.
Yeah.
Others, it's yoga nidra. They might feel that, like you said, they go down to the bottom of the ocean and they're just kind of floating and go, wow, I've never experienced that before. But then, maybe the next time it's more available, or they feel that when they're sitting in a beautiful place in nature, So the doorway is very individual. The experience, grows from there.
Right. And you were able to, I guess, open this doorway for Dr. Scott. And I'm going to switch a slide here.
Mm. Yeah, there we go.
And so this film that Chip Duncan and the crew and you were involved in, working with Dr. Scott what's his last name? Sorry, it's Stieber. Yeah. It's a beautiful documentary film called Pizza Prana. It's 12 minutes, and I highly recommend it to everybody. But you were working with him, and you were able to, like you said, you were crack open and kind of take things to a whole different level here with him. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So actually, Dr. Scott is my best friend's brother-in-law.
Oh,
so
wow.
I heard about his ALS diagnosis a couple years ago. And then I heard that he was working with yoga and some meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And he got to a point, he just was introduced to yoga from with a teacher, and he started to feel what we were just talking about, but he didn't know what it was. But he felt like it was important, and he felt like it had something to teach him. And we do recognize that prana has intelligence. So the work started to grow, and it grew kind of intuitively for him. And he started practicing longer on his own. Not that different from my journey, back in 1977 with my eating disorder.
Sure, yeah.
So my friend encouraged me to FaceTime with Scott, and immediately I knew he had tapped into that Prana Portal. And so about a month later, I flew to Pennsylvania, where he and his wife were living. And as soon as I walked in the door and we sat down and started talking, I probably hadn't seen him in 15 years or so. And I'm like, "You're tapping into prana." And he goes, "I don't even know what prana is." So he calls me the explainer in chief. So I was able to explain to him what was happening. And I said, explain this layer of energy and that he was accessing that. And when you see Scott doing his practice in the film, there's an ease to it. There's an energetic quality. When he lifts his arms up, he's not lifting his arms up from his physical body. He's lifting them from his energy body. And you can see it. You can feel it.
Yeah.
You can feel the power of his energy body bringing him into a chair pose. He does a lot of arm crossing like this.
Mm-hmm.
This is really good for our brain. When we cross that midline, our right and left hemispheres of our brain really like that full cross. And so he does this, he twists, and then he does Kapalabhati breathing. I'm like, you're just taking all these prana practices and putting them together to create vitality, balance, and flow. And so I kind of started narrating his practice for him, which he felt like energized it to a whole different level. And where he goes in his meditations, he feels he's 9 years, almost 10 post-diagnosis now. Yeah. And he feels that he is more vibrant and present than ever. So it continues to serve him, but he does practice 2 to 3 hours a day.
Yes.
So he's really committed to his daily practice. In fact, he often he'll time himself and he'll send me a screenshot of how long he practiced. So I love that, little check-in, 2 hours and 57 minutes today. It's pretty incredible.
Wow.
But it's incredible from the way the film opens, and you're not quite sure what's going on, and then within the first 30 seconds you realize that I guess he's got ALS, and then he's all the difficulties that must come along with that, right? Mm-hmm. But then you see the progression through the film of the breathing, and you guys doing your the meditation and the breathing, and then there's a change. There's a change in him where he's he's in the powered wheelchair, and he's kind of starting to bombing down the streets in Miami, right? And then hitting the restaurants and
slurping down a dozen oysters, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, the oyster thing. He says, "I like oysters." He's going for the oysters. I'm like, wow, this guy's amazing. And then the pizza, because he loves pizza, and he goes to his favorite, and I think he's drinking a beer. He's got his pizza. It's just like it was just absolutely incredible just to see the progression
Mhm.
And yeah, unfortunately, a friend of ours passed away of ALS just about a month ago, from the Pachamama Alliance. So we do some stuff within Ecuador, and yeah, and it can be just
Mm.
well, it is a debilitating and horrific disease, right? So to see him, I mean, just come the other way, it's
Mhm.
just it's
Yeah,
incredible.
most incredible, I believe, is the relationship that he has with his breath, because the breathing is what usually goes first. And so what we found, breathing and swallowing, especially with bulbar onset, his onset's more in the extremities, but he definitely, you can hear in his voice. And he has bulbar onset also, bulbar symptoms. So I found an NIH study that talked about the swallowing reflex being very closely linked to exhalation. So we work a lot on 3-part exhalations. He does a lot of Kapalabhati with that forced exhalation. And so that forced exhalation, passive inhalation, strengthens his diaphragm physically,
Yeah.
as well as serves to, create more of a relationship, and a new relationship with his ability to swallow. And another thing that he does that's really cool is he brings prana on through mindfulness. So as part of his 3-hour practice, he drinks a great big container of elixir. It's a bunch of vitamins and stuff,
Right.
but it's like part of his practice. He picks it up. It's like a chalice, and he drinks it, and he mindfully drinks this potion, his vitamins. And so he brings mindfulness on board. He brings mindfulness into his everyday life. He says that ALS is a sloppy disease. Mindfulness has neatened it up. So he needs to have his mind on board through this prana portal to be in his physical body in a more effective and graceful way. So, a lot of really interesting insights from our collaboration. I like to think of it as a collaboration that we have together, exploring how this has been supporting his ALS.
Wow. It's really, it's fascinating, what you guys had did together and then produced the film. And then it's just the little bits of things that, I've learned, Devin's learned, we learned over the past year, just for, creating a better life for all of us. From just breath work. I mean, the nose breathing, I learned a lot. I never knew that. I didn't know that that's the way we were supposed to breathe, so many millennia ago, I guess. And it was almost of us, I think, that, you don't breathe through your mouth, you breathe, or you don't breathe through your nose, you breathe through your mouth. I was reading the book Breathe, where I think in Mexico, just, several years ago, a teacher would smack the kids on the hand or whatever if they were caught breathing through their mouth, because they were teaching them to nose breathe, right? They were supposed to be nose breathe. I had no idea. I mean, all these little things that that can make our lives so much, calmer and better. And I had no idea. So yeah, thank you for sharing all of this. It's it's wonderful.
Yeah, I love sharing the energy body with, I actually work with the teacher training here, and I teach most of the pranamaya kosha, the energy work, and what is the energy body? The structures are the chakras, the pranavayus, and the nadis, which are like the meridians in acupuncture. And then what are the vehicles? How can we actually access prana? Through mudras, which are hand gestures, which, I first learned about mudras and I was a little bit mudra shmudra. It seemed kind of weird. And I love the mudras. I mean, there's a mudra that calms the anxious mind and heart. So you might like this one.
Yeah, I got my hand up, ready to
go. You just curl your index finger into the base of your thumb. And you just do that on either hand. It's not a weird one, so you're not doing something odd up here where people are going, "What's Nigel doing?" So it's taking the element of air, which is the index finger, and grounding it to the base of the thumb, which is earth. And it's very grounding. People use it for a job interview or having a difficult conversation with a friend. It's just very grounding and settling. It usually increases the length of the exhalation. I taught it to my 7-year-old granddaughter to use before her spelling tests.
Oh.
So we all have times where we get agitated, and knowing that we can access our prana portal and calm ourselves down and be present is really a gift to ourselves and an opportunity.
Wow.
So it's the mudras. So I teach mudras in the prana workshops that I teach. I do breath techniques to energize, to calm, and to balance. They're different. We do yoga nidra, which is, as we were talking earlier, really a very prana-based practice where we're accessing different ways to get in that prana portal through the energy body or through the physical body, through our mind and emotions, through our limiting beliefs with the feeling of complementary opposites, through visualization. And so there are 3-hour workshops, and I have 3 different workshops I'm going to start offering in October on Saturdays.
Nice.
And I've worked with people who have done yoga before and people who've never meditated or done yoga, teaching them how to access prana through all these different methods. And my hope is that after the 9 hours, they go, oh, I'm going to be with the breath for a while. Or I really liked accessing steadiness of mind through the feeling of steadiness in my own body. Or boy, those mudras were interesting. I'd like to learn more about that. So to me, it's offering a lot of different doorways, and then letting everybody find their way in, and then from there it grows, right?
Yeah.
Continues to grow. So
Wow.
excited about
So are you finding, because it's been a very challenging 18 months plus, for a lot of people, that going into our new world, because we're stepping out into a new world now, and people have, we've developed different weird anxieties and all sorts of things with going back into the workplace or going into a shop, or even this type of practice. It's really helped me a lot with doing some of these things. I'm just scratching the surface. Would you recommend, I guess you would recommend, of course you'd recommend, people checking it out.
Yeah. Come in and try out the workshops and see what speaks to you. If you found that the ice cold bath was the journey in, then that's where you start. But like Devin was saying, now he can access that state of meditation with or without. He knows what it feels like. It's like my client with the left-right breathing. That first time you do it, and would you intuitively think of doing this kind of right-left breathing with your hands? But all of a sudden now he knows he can get there. And so these different portals, it's sort of a smorgasbord of prana practices. And everyone that comes in is a little bit different. And it doesn't matter how old you are, I did access a lot of these practices with my son. My son's 35, and he and his wife just had their first baby, and Brooke's 10 months old now. But when he was 6, he had cancer, and it was a very serious diagnosis. He was on a respirator for 2.5 weeks. Talk about having a difficult relationship with your breathing. And he was pretty much in the hospital for 9 months, getting chemotherapy and every side effect you can imagine. But we did body scans every night, and he would feel these, we called them blue healing stars, just massaging areas of his body that were hurting. And he was accessing prana, and he could feel it. He'd come and get me every night to do a body scan with him, because he felt involved in his healing. And isn't that what we all want to do? We want to be a part of our healing process. He used breath work to calm himself when he was taking medications, because he couldn't swallow pills. He's only 6. And so he'd get really hyped up because he had to taste it in pudding or something. And so we would do some calm breathing, like a 2-part inhalation, a 4-part exhalation. And we had a little mantra that we said. And when he was finished, he would stand up and he'd say, I'm ready. And he'd take his medicine. And he even used his breath for spinal taps. He didn't want to take he he said, I bribed him. I said, if you don't take the sleepy medication, you can play video games all afternoon. And he's like, well, I'm totally in on that. So, so we would do the breath work while he was getting spinal taps to check his bone marrow, as well as he got one medication through his spine 3 different times because the type of cancer he had can come back in the brain. But he's 35 and he's healthy and leading a normal life. But he learned these practices when he was 6. So you can learn them at 86, 66.
Yeah.
16 when you're going through all those crazy hormone experiences, or the ripe young age of 6 years old, depending on what life puts in your lap.
And you mentioned at the beginning, kind of off before you started taping here, that you have some workshops coming up, right? Like in the next couple of months.
So they're called the Power of Prana, and they're that smorgasbord that I was talking about earlier. So each workshop is 3 hours long, and there's one every Saturday, once a month. I think it's the second Saturday of each month, from 9:30 to 12:30 Central Standard Time on Zoom. So they're available to anybody, anywhere. It'll be the second time I've offered them. And the first time I had people from coast to coast tuning in, and I describe or explain the practice, where it came from. I try to bring in all different disciplines, not just yoga. And then we do the practice together and reflect on our experience. And so again, it's a smorgasbord. Each one builds on the one before it, getting into, a little bit more complicated breath patterns. We start with a little bit easier, more available breath patterns, as well as some mudras, the chakras. What are they? How do they relate to the physical body? So there's a lot of education and also a lot of practice and experience. So if anybody's interested, they're on my website at Trillium Studio MKE.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Do you have any wrapping?
No, I think we'll wrap it up for today with
questions?
that. That was incredible. Thank you so much for coming on the show. If you guys want to know more, you want to check out some workshops, you want to check out the film, we'll put the links into the description of the video. Other than that, do you have any final words for the listeners? And also just thank you again, and we'll have to have you back.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I hope I see you both in Peru.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm going to be hang on. Wait a minute. What am I doing here? I'm going
Right
like,
now.
Curl it in.
Curl
like-
it in.
am I doing
So
that
take
right?
your
It's,
index
what am I
finger
doing?
tip
Yeah.
right to the base of your thumb, like a little curl, like a little, yep, that's it.
It's almost like a fern.
I know, I always say it's like a fiddlehead fern, right?
A fiddlehead. Yeah, it's like a fiddlehead.
Yeah.
That I just got to remember fiddlehead. Yeah. Is this because when you're like, if you're in I don't know, Bali, Indonesia, or wherever, and through like even Malay, like the dancers dance, in India too, I guess it's
Oh yeah.
everything is about the hands. It's fascinating.
There's hundreds of mudras, and they're probably my biggest area of study. I think they're super fascinating, and everybody has hands, so we can all use, the power of these mudras to awaken energies within us that are always present, but can be difficult to sense and feel. So they're pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool. Great. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Tina. We really, really appreciate it. Yeah, we do hope to see you in Peru. And when we do, we'll continue our chat there.
Sounds good. Thank you so much to both of you. Really enjoyed this time together.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks.